I never thought I'd find myself in that situation. When my husband, Daniel, told me his colleague Michael would be picking me up for the office dinner, I didn't think twice. Daniel and I had been married for 6 years, and he trusted Michael like a brother. They worked together in the same firm, shared lunches, late meetings, and sometimes even golf weekends. I had met Michael a few times at company parties. He was charming in that easygoing way, with dark hair always slightly tousled, a warm smile that made people feel instantly at ease, and a voice deep enough to sound comforting. That Saturday evening, I stood in front of the mirror in our bedroom, adjusting my navy blue dress. It hugged my figure just enough to feel elegant without being too revealing. I tried different earrings, fixing my hair again and again. Daniel passed by the door, laughing at my nervousness. "Claire, it's just Michael driving you. You look beautiful as always," he said, kissing my forehead before going back to his office nook. I felt a flutter in my stomach as I put on my nude heels. When I heard the doorbell, I hurried downstairs. Michael stood there, dressed in a sleek black suit, a subtle cologne drifting toward me. His eyes lit up when he saw me. "Wow, Claire, you look stunning," he said, his voice lower than I remembered. I blushed and grabbed my clutch. "Thank you, Michael. Let's go before Daniel changes his mind about lending me to you," I joked. He chuckled, offering his arm as we walked to his car, a shiny black Mercedes. The ride started quietly, the city lights flickering past us. Michael turned on soft jazz, and for a few minutes, I focused on my breathing, trying to calm the strange excitement growing inside me. He started asking about my week, my art classes, and my new yoga routine. It surprised me how much he remembered from random conversations. I looked at him, studying the curve of his jaw, the way his fingers gripped the wheel confidently. At a red stoplight near the edge of town, he turned slightly toward me. The music played softly in the background. "You know, I've always admired you," he said, almost in a whisper. I felt my heart leap. I forced a small laugh, thinking maybe he meant it in a friendly way. "Admired me? For what?" I asked, my voice shaking slightly. His eyes met mine, a sudden intensity there I wasn't ready for. "Your kindness. The way you support Daniel. The way you smile, you have this light around you, Claire. It's rare." The air inside the car changed, heavy and electric. I tried to say something, but my lips felt dry. The stoplight seemed to last forever. His hand reached across the center console and rested gently on my knee. I should have moved it away, but instead, my skin burned under his touch. I glanced down at his hand, strong and warm, my heart hammering in my chest. I looked back at his eyes, and we shared a moment that felt longer than it really was. My breath quickened, and I felt my cheeks flush. He leaned in just a little, close enough that I could smell his cologne mixed with the faint scent of mint. Then the light turned green. He slowly took his hand back, returning both to the wheel, but his eyes stayed on mine for a second longer before he looked forward. We drove on in silence, the moment echoing in the small space between us. At the restaurant, Michael opened my door and helped me out. His hand lingered at my waist as I stepped down, sending a shiver up my spine. Inside, Daniel waved us over to the long table. I walked toward him, my legs a little unsteady, feeling as if the whole room could see the heat radiating off me. Daniel stood up and kissed my cheek, pulling out my chair. Dinner went on with laughter, clinking glasses, and cheerful conversations. Michael sat 2 seats away, sometimes catching my gaze, his eyes carrying an unspoken message I felt deep in my chest. Every time I glanced his way, I felt my pulse spike. Daniel seemed oblivious, happily joking with his coworkers. Halfway through dinner, Michael made a toast to Daniel's latest promotion. He spoke confidently, his words warm and supportive, but when he looked at me, there was something else in his expression, something personal, almost like a secret. I forced myself to laugh and clap along with everyone else, but inside, my mind replayed that moment at the stoplight over and over. After dinner, we stepped outside to wait for valet service. A gentle breeze danced around us, lifting strands of my hair. Michael stood a few feet away, his eyes occasionally drifting to me, and I pretended to check my phone to avoid those looks. Daniel wrapped his arm around my shoulder. "Did you have fun tonight?" he asked, smiling. I nodded quickly. "Yeah, it was wonderful." Michael's car pulled up first. He waved, saying goodnight to everyone. But before he got in, he paused and looked at me. Our eyes locked for a second. In that instant, I felt like the whole night had been a silent conversation between us. Only we understood the words. He nodded slightly, then got in and drove away. Daniel and I drove home together, and the whole ride I could feel Michael's touch on my knee. The warmth of that moment stuck under my skin. Daniel chatted about work, about the next vacation, and I answered automatically, my mind somewhere else entirely. When we reached home, Daniel held my hand as we walked inside. He seemed so happy, so proud of his work and the people around him. I watched him moving around the kitchen, pouring himself a glass of water, and I felt a pang of guilt mixed with something else, something thrilling and terrifying at the same time. That night, as we lay in bed, Daniel fell asleep quickly, breathing softly beside me. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the stoplight again and again. I could feel my heart drumming in my chest as if Michael's hand was still resting there. I knew nothing had really happened, but in a way, something had shifted inside me. The next morning, I tried to act normal. I made breakfast, poured coffee, kissed Daniel on the cheek. But every now and then, I felt a flush run through me, a secret warmth I carried all day. When Daniel left for work, I stood at the window, sipping my coffee slowly, wondering if Michael would mention the moment, if he would text or call. But nothing came. A few days passed. I went back to my yoga classes, I painted in my small studio, I met friends for lunch. But I couldn't shake the memory. Sometimes I'd catch myself staring at my phone, waiting for a message that never came. Sometimes at night, I'd dream of that stoplight, waking up with my heart pounding. One afternoon, I got a call from Daniel. He sounded happy. "Hey, Claire, I invited Michael over for dinner tonight. He's been working late and could use some company. Hope that's okay." I froze, my stomach tightening. "Of course, that's fine," I said, trying to sound normal. I spent the next few hours cleaning the house, lighting candles, and preparing pasta. When Michael arrived, he stood at the door with a bottle of wine, looking almost shy. Daniel greeted him warmly, pulling him into the kitchen. I tried to avoid Michael's gaze, but each time our eyes met, that electric energy returned, rushing through me like a hidden current. During dinner, I caught Michael looking at me when Daniel wasn't watching. Sometimes he smiled softly, and my breath would hitch. After dinner, we sat in the living room, Daniel talking about his new project, Michael listening carefully but occasionally flicking his gaze toward me. At one point, Daniel went to get another bottle of wine from the basement. The room fell silent, and Michael leaned closer. "Claire," he whispered, his voice low. My heart skipped. "About the other night," he started, but before he could continue, Daniel came back upstairs. Michael sat back quickly, his face composed again. Daniel didn't seem to notice. He handed Michael the wine, and they laughed together. When Michael finally left, he paused at the door. Our eyes met again, a silent goodbye in that look. He stepped outside into the night, and I closed the door slowly, my heart still trembling. Later, I sat on the couch with Daniel, his head resting on my lap as he scrolled through his phone. I ran my fingers through his hair, feeling a complex storm of emotions swirl inside me: guilt, excitement, curiosity, fear. In the days that followed, I tried to push the moment away, to remind myself nothing really happened. But every time I thought of Michael, that stoplight, and his warm hand on my knee, my breath caught. I knew there was a line we hadn't crossed, but I also knew we had stepped dangerously close to it. Michael and I never spoke about it directly after that. He continued coming to dinner sometimes, joining us for game nights, always polite and friendly, always that same warm, easygoing colleague to Daniel. But each time our eyes met, I felt the unspoken words between us, that moment that would always belong to just us, hidden in the folds of memory. Sometimes, late at night when Daniel was asleep beside me, I would replay that night in my mind. The red stoplight, the music, the touch, the look in Michael's eyes, and wonder what might have happened if the light had stayed red just a little longer. I knew I loved my husband. I knew I wasn't the kind of woman who would destroy her marriage for a fleeting moment. But I also knew that what happened at that stoplight had changed me forever. It left me with a secret corner of my heart that pulsed with excitement and danger, a memory I would carry like a tiny flame, hidden but alive. In the end, nothing more came of it, but it taught me something about desire, about the fragile lines we draw, and the surprising places our hearts can go when we least expect it. And every time I saw a red stoplight after that, I remembered Michael's hand on my knee and the woman I almost became.